Zero trust before the cloud. What Windows Firewall got right years ago. Oh, that's what I was waiting for. Quick introduction. Who am I? So I'm a security engineer at a company in the payroll/umbrella sector called PayStream. I'm passionate about quite a few different things in security, but security, infrastructure, networking, and cloud. And it is my second B-Sides talk. So, what is zero trust networking? So, start off with what is zero trust. It's a concept in security where we follow the rule of never trust, always verify. And then in the context of networking, it is just because you're within the network perimeter, like on the company network, you shouldn't be trusted to connect to whatever you want. And it's verifying that the user and the device should have authorization to connect to the resource. Zero trust networking follows least privilege, factoring in identity and context. It's typically more secure than a traditional flat network, where, as an example, instead of one flat like local area network, you've got VLANs for different resources, and also zero trust network access relates to zero trust networking, but slightly different, as with zero trust network access, it is typically application level access as opposed to network access. So if you have ZTNA, you authenticate to it and you have access, as opposed to a more traditional solution where you connect to your VPN and then you've got access to the resources. So, modern implementations of zero trust networking, at a high level, like a basic overview, your organization users are created in the platform, you register your devices, you install your tunneling software. So, as an example, Cloudflare, you'd install Cloudflare or the WAP client, and then you'd create your network policies. So, the example that I've given below is like you'd create a rule for your finance department to be able to access your internal payroll system, and you'd go there. But what I am exploring today is how Windows Defender Firewall has actually had zero trust networking built into it, and it's had these capabilities for about 20 years, I think since Server 2003, and how and where these features can be useful today. So, what is Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security? It's a built-in firewall software. It's included within the Windows operating system, and it is used to control connections that are allowed inbound and outbound from a device. And I've gave an example there of what a rule might look like. So this is allowing HTTP inbound. Then you give it a name, you define the ports, you define the scope, which is like what what subnets you want to be able to reach. But it has a lot more functionality than that. First of all, it does have identity aware features. So as you can see, as I hope you can see, the allow the connection if it is secure means that connections can only be accepted if they are authenticated and integrity protected. And you can go even further. So not just requiring connections to be authenticated and tied to an identity, but also you can restrict what connections are allowed based on users and computers. So going back to like the finance team example, you can see I've got a security group for my finance team or department, and I've got a similar group but for their workstations and laptops, and only connections that match this criteria will be allowed. And then, this is backed by connection security rules. So you'd create not a firewall rule, but connection security rule where you can request authentication to go like with the connections. And how I found it worked best was defining any subnet that you might expect authentication from, and setting computer and user so it can support the users and computers being associated with the connections. And there's a test there. So I created like a John Smith user, and you can see that connection's allowed, and that connection is associated to John Smith's user account. where I tried it with my admin account, which wasn't part of that group, with connection fails, and that was what SG Finance had in it. Next, application aware. So Windows Defender Firewall, also has application aware functionality. This is a more known feature than the last one. So in this, you can define only specific applications that are allowed to make inbound or outbound connections. So I've just called what that program.exe, but where this can be a lot more useful. So if you add SQL servers, for example, and you've got multiple SQL servers that do replication between them, as opposed to allowing the MS SQL traffic between SQL servers, you can restrict that to just the SQL server.exe. And then if an attacker was, compromised your SQL server, you're adding another step, making it harder to laterally move, as the connectivity would only be permitted for SQL server.exe. Another feature that I discovered during the research was health checks. So under the isolation tab, when you're creating a connection security rule, it mentions health status, and then when you're setting up authentication, it mentions a health certificate, computer health certificates. So I was thinking, you can also implement health checks. That is not the case anymore. Microsoft removed that feature from Windows 10, but it was a feature in the past. Finally, auditability. So one of the reasons why I think a lot of organizations don't use this feature, or haven't used this feature in the past as well, is that it can add complexity to your networking. But there are actually a lot of event logs and event IDs for various, for your IPsec sessions, for stuff for connections failing, for authentication and negotiation failing. But you also have logs of user accounts and computers making connections to your devices, your servers, where just using standard firewall logging, you don't have that visibility. So what are the advantages of Windows Firewall in the context of zero trust networking? You've got that it's on-prem only, and so it doesn't require any internet connectivity, doesn't require access to any clouds. If you're in an air-gapped network, this will work. It's included with Windows licensing, so there's no additional cost. Whereas modern zero trust networking solutions, you're paying a per user license. It can get expensive pretty quickly. And also, where you do have if you already have a mature domain environment, like most people who are running Active Directory, you've already got all your identities, you've already got your security groups, so you've already got all of that configuration. But it is not perfect. And it does fall short in a few ways today. One of which is it doesn't support cloud identities. So I've said Entra, but if you're syncing between Entra and AD, then that's not what I mean. But more if resources have identities, or Okta or any other identity provider. There's no real-time user risk evaluation like what you have where, for example, some modern solutions might look at if you've got disk encryption, if you've got the latest antivirus signatures, if your OS is patched. No health checks either anymore. It's not designed for latency sensitive workloads, so it probably won't be a good fit in operational technology and could lead to disasters. But I think the main reason why this hasn't really been picked up by organizations is due to the documentation. There isn't much. I had to figure out a lot of this by myself. And as an organization, you probably don't want to be using a feature that didn't have that much documentation. But it can still be useful today in Windows heavy environments, heavy Active Directory environments. Like I've said, you've already got the licensing, you've got the identities. It is also a budget-friendly zero trust networking solution. But another use case that I didn't add was that with legacy applications where maybe they're not encrypting traffic in transit or don't or do authentication or don't do authentication well, you can use features here to add on to these applications to, meet that criteria. And ultimately, you can use some of the features I've discussed today to improve your network security using zero trust principles and enhance your security posture. But cheers.
Any questions?
It's a quick one. Can we still control Windows Firewall through GPU?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. And you can also disable rule merging, so you can disable any rules that are created by someone on the OS. Or when applications create rules as well, so you can disable them.
How do services, or how are executables identified? If it gets replaced, how are they linked?
There's no digital signature or hash verification, so you are simply relying on it being in the right path. I don't know if you can use wildcards, but I think that's it.
If you've got any other questions, feel free to grab Ben. He'll be around. Let's do one more round of applause.